You're still watching the Out of Your Business Morning. Welcome to Global Business, where we look at business news stories around the continent of Africa and indeed the rest of the world. My name is Ubong Kings, and here are the headlines making the rounds. We're starting off in Africa, where it's reported that Ernst & Young Kenya has been banned from World Bank projects. And outside Africa and into the world of automobiles, BYD is set to become the biggest electric vehicle seller in the world. And still from the foreign scene, Sanofi eyes 1.3 billion euros investment in Germany. We'll bring you details of these news stories and more right after this break. Please stay. You're watching Global Business on the Out of Your Business Morning, and we begin from Africa, where it's reported that the Kenyan President William Ruto has said that the country will resort to more borrowing to plug a growing budget deficit after the rejection of the finance bill that would have increased tax revenue. Following deadly protests last week, Ruto declined to sign the bill and wrote to Parliament to withdraw it. Unfortunately, the failure of the bill had hurt the government's efforts to ease the country's debt burden, owing to the fact that Kenya's debt is over $80 billion and around 60% of Kenya's revenues go to servicing this debt. President Ruto finally promised to reduce the budget of the presidency and eliminate non-essential expenditure. Now, let's look at something very critical here. A few things are worth emphasizing. Now, let's start with first the notion about the possibility of opting for a loan than the taxation of the Kenya people. Now, unfortunately, the failure of the taxation bill, so to speak, did hurt the government's efforts to ease the country's debt burden. Of course, this was owing to the fact that Kenya's debt at the moment is over $80 billion US dollars. And about 60% of Kenya's revenues, that's money coming in, is used to service this debt. Well, that's really sad, yes, I agree. But now there's also this other part of this reportage that appears and feels comforting, for lack of better expression, which will be the last paragraph that says that President Ruto has finally promised to reduce the budget of the presidency and eliminate non-essential expenditure. Now, a lot of things come to mind, and one of the things you can only say is I wish Nigeria can take the cue from this to actually reduce the budget of presidency to eliminate non-essential expenditure. I hope we get to that point soon. Moving on to other business news stories, still from Africa, and we're taking more stories from Kenya, where it's reported that Ernst & Young Kenya has been banned from participating in projects funded by the World Bank Group for the next 2.5 years after it failed to disclose a conflict of interest while working on 4 contracts under the SCORE and PFM2 projects and the involvement of an agent in those contracts. This is part of a settlement agreement in which the company admits guilt for sanctionable practices and agrees to comply with specified integrity conditions in order to be released from the department. Furthermore, the department means Ernst & Young Kenya and any affiliated companies are now ineligible, to participate in projects and operations financed by the World Bank Group. The company is also required to establish and implement an integrity compliance program based on the principles outlined in the World Bank Group Integrity Compliance Guidelines and commit to continuing full cooperation with the WG Integrity Vice Presidency. Now, first, I want to draw our attention to something, and I want to pretty much start from an explanation of giving you a background of quite a number of things. Number one is the fact that Ernst & Young is firstly a multinational professional services partnership and happens to be one of the largest professional services networks in the world. The likes of Deloitte, KPMG, and PwC it's within that category, and it is considered one of the big four accounting firms in the world. Now, for failing to disclose a conflict of interest while working on 4 contracts, not one, 4 projects under the score, and of course the PFM 2 projects, and its involvement having an agent in these contracts, this it's very unacceptable, and they were banned from participating in projects funded by the World Bank Group for the next 2.5 years. And if you ask me, this was very lenient. It's a very lenient penalty. Now, probably because the company itself is known for quite a number of things. The company admitted guilt for sanctionable practices and agreed eventually to comply with specified integrity conditions. Now, how often do we see this happen in Nigeria? Well, I'll let you be the judge of that matter. Moving on to other stories, and from the world of automobiles, let's bring you the story that the largest Chinese car maker, BYD, is reported record sales in the second quarter of this year, likely overtaking Tesla to become the biggest electric car seller globally, particularly in Europe and in China. BYD recorded a number of new energy vehicles in the second quarter of this year, including pure electric vehicles and plug-in hybrid cars. Pure EV sales amounted to about 426,000 units, likely surpassing Tesla's projected sales of 441,019 EVs for the June quarter. Now, this will be the second time the Chinese best-selling brand has overtaken Tesla to become the biggest EV seller globally, having first topped Tesla's EV sales in the final quarter of 2023. Fortunately, the surge in sales was primarily driven by aggressive price cuts amid sluggish Chinese demand and competition with other major rivals. Now, what can I really say, right? This is, I'd say, simply business at its best. You know why? While we await the proposed tariffs and sanctions, by way of lack of better expression, on the Chinese EVs imposed by the European Union, and the counter tariffs and sanctions, so to speak, imposed by China on pork from the European Union, it is not surprising. No, it's not surprising that the largest Chinese car maker, BYD, has reported record sales in the second quarter and overtaking Tesla to become the biggest electric car seller globally, particularly in Europe and in China. Now, let this sink in a little bit. Now, they have overtaken Tesla to become the biggest electric car seller globally, particularly in Europe and China. Now, interestingly, this will be the second time that this has happened. Recall that last quarter of 2023, Chinese automaker, I'm talking about BYD, actually beat Tesla to the game, becoming, of course, selling more cars than Tesla. Now, is there a doubt about BYD's capacity in the electric vehicle space? Well, fingers crossed, till the 4th and 5th of this month, where the EU and China had given deadlines for the enactment of their respective tariffs against each other. We'll wait till then and see how all of that pans out. You're still watching Global Business right here on the Afia Business Morning on Afia TV. Do well to join in this conversation and more on the Afia Business YouTube channel. Do well to visit www.youtube.com/@AfiaBusiness. And while you're there, do well to hit the like button and subscribe button so that you get updated on all business-related content coming out from Afia TV. Up next will be more business news stories from the rest of the world right after this break. Please stay. Afia Business Morning on Afia TV, and you're still watching Global Business. Now to the rest of our stories. We're moving on to business news stories from around the world and out of the world of automobiles. India is in talks with countries in Africa and Latin America to get critical mineral blocks on a government-to-government basis. Vena Kumari Demal, Joint Secretary of the Ministry of Mines, said at an industry event. The official says that India is also in discussions with Australia for critical minerals and may have to fast-track clearance for domestic critical mineral blocks. Furthermore, Kantharan, India's Secretary of Mines, said at an industry event in March that India was exploring opportunities in Africa for minerals such as copper, cobalt, and other critical resources, while also pursuing lithium blocks in Australia. Just hold up a minute. Let's just hold up real quickly. And does this news sound fascinating to you? A few things I want to point out real quickly. Statement says India is looking for which countries in Africa and possibly outside Africa, Australia specifically, for what it describes as critical mineral blocks. Let's put on thinking caps. India was once classified as a third world country, as a matter of fact, the poverty capital of the world. But fast forward to now, India is coming to Africa. I want you to understand this. India is coming to Africa for what exactly? To search for critical mineral blocks. Now, what does this tell you? Now, let me help you. This clearly shows that India has advanced over the years deliberately to the point that they have capacity for exploration of critical mineral blocks in other climes outside of their own, with manpower, equipment, and technological capabilities. Yet Nigeria is still talking about whether or not it has resolved all issues on its 1.3 billion US dollars oil field scandal. And India was once called the poverty capital of the world. Now they have a GDP PPP per capita of 10,123 points. And Nigeria's GDP to PPP ratio is put at 6,340 points, far less than that of India. Well, leave it where it is. And moving away from that, let's move on to the business stories still from around the world, but from the world of health. French pharmaceutical giant Sanofi is set to invest between 1.3 billion euros and 1.5 billion euros in its Frankfurt manufacturing site, making the insulin brand Lantus. Sanofi had revealed that it was originally thinking about moving its Lantus manufacturing operations to France, but has opted to upgrade its German site instead. Daiichi Sankyo, another major healthcare and pharmaceutical company, has also recently announced a 1 billion euro investment in Cancer Research Institute near Munich, along with another one in Cambridge, Massachusetts. Although Sanofi has not provided much information on this investment, it would be a boost for a German economy which has been struggling for several months with high interest rates, a soaring cost of living, and sticky inflation. Now let's break this down real quickly, and we want to start here. It's reported that these two multinationals, I'm talking about the French pharmaceutical giant Sanofi, as well as, of course, Daiichi Sankyo, who happens to be another major healthcare pharmaceutical company, are pitching their tents in terms of investment in Germany to the tune of about 1.5 billion euros and 1 billion euros respectively. Now, this in itself is a most needed boost for Germany's economy, which has been struggling for several months with high interest rates and soaring cost of living and sticky inflation, which of course Nigeria is also going through the same thing. But what is the Nigeria's economic situation? You may want to take a wild guess, because we still have issues with what will probably bring these investors in. Security challenge, one. Number two, government policies which are not stable. Pretty much another issue. So clearly, these investors have seen a safe haven in Germany to invest. Hopefully, Nigeria gets it right by getting right government policies on board and security issues tackled, and every other thing, especially taxation, taken care of. And we'll look into those other issues on the Eastern Business Report. But then, in an attempt to end this bulletin, let's bring you this report that the UK Horticultural Traders Association and sister groups from across Europe, which is the trade bodies representing garden centers in the UK and the European Union, has signed an open letter calling upon political leaders to tackle a post-Brexit border crisis. They claim that new changes to import procedures applied in April are causing delays, damage, and extra costs for those bringing plants into the UK. However, the groups claim that they are lobbying for constructive dialogue and action in the light of the UK general election on the 4th of July. The signatories include the Horticultural Trade Association UK, which represents around 1,400 garden retailers. EU bodies supporting the cause include the Dutch Association for Nursery Stock and Flower Bulbs and the International Flower Trade Association based in Brussels. Now let's hold up real quickly. Now, according to this story, the claim here is that new changes to port procedures, which was applied in April, are causing delays, damage, and extra costs for those bringing plants into the UK. Just hold on. Have you considered the Nigerian ports? Let's ask that question. Okay, let's bring it home. Are you aware that the volume of vessel calls, which of course translates to the number of vessels coming into the country, has reduced so drastically in Nigeria that terminal operators and shipping companies are struggling, as it were, to remain afloat? Now, reports from the Nigerian Ports Consultative Council, NPCC, is in its quarterly meeting actually did show that cargo imports dropped by a whopping 20%. Containerized goods also dropped by 30%, and vehicle imports by 55%. That's not all. It also learned that a vessel that previously came into the country, that's Nigeria, with about 4,000 containers, now comes in with just 300. Now, interestingly, a former vice president of the Association of Nigerian Licensed Agents at the port, of course, Mr. Kayode Farito, said the unstable exchange rate set by the Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, for payment of import duty will always continue to lead to further drops in cargo volumes at the nation's seaports if government fails to take prompt action and address the problem. I rest my case. You're still watching the Afia Business Morning right here on Afia TV. You can join in on this conversation on our new Afia Business YouTube channel. You can do well to go to www.youtube.com/@Afia Business. And while you're there, do well to like and hit the subscribe button so you can get all notifications on all business related content coming to you from Afia TV. Coming up next is a conversation on the news that Southwest states are rolling out food production plans to halt food prices. Now, the question that comes to mind is, what is the Southeast doing? The Afia Business Morning will be right back. My name is Ubong Kings. Stay tuned.